joining us. My name is Bridget Kelly Lynch, and I've been working on the sustainable logistics and transportation presentation. I've been studying sustainable business, and I'm just about to earn my degree in that next week, actually. So this has been my bread and butter. I've also worked a little bit in transportation and logistics with my dad, so he'll put his 2 cents in if it's a really logistics side thing that I don't know. But we'll just get started talking about sustainability basics, and then we'll get into the logistics side. So starting out, part 1 will be sustainable logistics basics. Part 2, we'll talk about sustainable logistics strategies, and part 3 will bring it into implementation and what you can do going forward to start using sustainable practices in your business. I just want to start out with the difference between green and sustainable. Sustainability is more focused on social, economic, and environmental value added. We'll talk about the triple bottom line and triple top line approaches in just a second. Green is more of a vague term. I'm sure you've heard it. That can be used for marketing, but it really doesn't mean a whole lot other than environmental impacts. It doesn't focus at all on the social or profit side of things. And you can't just make decisions anymore that are good for people or just good for the environment or just good for profitability. You have to start thinking in terms of all of these things to consider yourself a sustainable business. And that thought of you're going to lose money while helping the environment, that's more of an outdated green way of thinking in business. There's a whole new paradigm attached to this where you can actually make money or save money and also do good for the environment and for people. That's where the triple bottom line comes in. The triple bottom line is an accounting method that focuses on social and environmental performance. We refer to it a lot as people, planet, profit, the 3 Ps, because it's just easy to remember that way. And the whole idea behind that is to reduce waste and reduce negative impacts and also reduce costs. So one example I have written here is just reducing water usage by installing low-flow toilets and sinks in your office. That'll save you money, better for people, better for the planet. So moving on, we'll talk about the triple top line. And this is a newer approach, more rigorous standards. So rather than just taking the negative away, you also want to generate added value to people, planet, and profit. And it helps you to manage your liabilities, but also add value. So that's why this is more of a preferred method. It's a newer way of thinking, but it is a little bit harder to reach. So an example is collecting water used from washing cans or dishes in the office and watering a community garden with it. It's good for profit because you're not only saving money, but you're making your office really beautiful in case clients come there. And you're also not wasting that water. So it's better for the environment, better for your costs, better for people. Moving on to sustainable logistics. So we wrote this definition for sustainable logistics, and it involves examining ecological, social, and financial impacts of logistics, transportation, and supply chain activities. The visual way I wanted to think about this was the different inputs and outputs of your business. So inputs would be trucks, fuel, materials, everything you do to operate. And then outputs would be the products and services, but it also comes with some negatives like pollution and waste that you aim to reduce. And sustainable logistics is not some trend that's going to go away. It's growing. It's better for business. it's gaining a lot of momentum, and there's more demand from consumers for this type of business.
You know, I'd like to jump in real quick. Is when Kelly and I started on this project, we started looking up. You know, you start Googling sustainable logistics. It's so new that, and there's so much, so little good information on it. That definition, she made that up, or we made that up as we went. I mean, we understood what sustainable was. We know what logistics is, but this is still very new. And one of the things, we've done this webinar a number of times, and one of the things that we've heard over and over again is, yeah, this is green, but will customers pay for it? I mean, again, they're missing the point that this is a new paradigm. This is, Kelly said, this is something that's going to be good for the bottom line, good for the environment, and good for people involved too. And again, there seems to be this belief that you're compromising somehow. The whole idea behind sustainable logistics is hopefully you're not compromising any of those three things when you do it.
Great, and this is a movement by businesses, because they're realizing that customers want this, and that it won't cost them money. They might have money in capital, but they'll have a short payback period, or it'll help them even produce more money and more profit. So yeah, the whole idea gets back to that whole green mentality where you're just putting money into it, and it's good for the environment, but it's not helping your business at all. That's an idea we don't want you guys to walk away thinking after you are with us in this webinar. Moving on, just go through real quick a couple ecological benefits: air quality, less noise pollution, conservation, wise use of natural resources, diverted landfill waste, and fewer harmful emissions. Social benefits: improved job satisfaction. A lot of people are looking for a mission in their job now, and job satisfaction, and sustainable practices can really help you get there.
I should also add that millennials are much more likely to latch onto a company that has an environmental and or a sustainable business purpose.
Yeah, and with a lot of baby boomers like leaving and retiring, that's really important going forward. Attracting more people to sustainable, or to logistics companies with these sustainable practices. So healthier communities, public relations, and a company culture that people can latch on to and really feel like they have a mission in their work, and a safer work environment as well. Just some financial benefits: you can save on a lot of different things: packaging, labor costs, fuel, utilities. And then also, if you're really smart about it, you can generate added value. And we'll touch on that more in marketing benefits. So you can attract new customers through sustainable logistics practices. There's a lot of companies out there looking for logistics that meets their needs, and maybe they have their own social or environmental mission. And so they're kind of looking to see, hey, what's everyone out there doing? And this is more cutting edge and differentiating in a very commoditized market, because right now logistics is very price driven and freight is very price driven, and this is something that can help your company to stand out. And also corporate social responsibility. Consumers are now demanding more transparency, and they want to see from start to finish that it's a supply chain they can trust. So that leads to better public relations, and also opportunities to partner with companies that are involved in sustainable practices or sustainable business practices.
I know, Wendy, you're here out in Portland, and I know this is an especially important topic out in Seattle and Portland, where you have a lot of companies interested in sustainability, not just companies, people too.
Yep, that's a big focus out here, Joe.
But in any of the newer cities, it feels, not that you guys are new, but growing, it feels like there's a growing demand from consumers for this. So you're going to see companies respond.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different types of benefits to getting involved in sustainable logistics. The next topic we'll go into is greenwashing, and this is a term you may or may not have heard of, and it's when a company talks about, they're all talk about their environmental impacts, and they insincerely display concern for the environment. Customers now are very savvy enough to spot this, and it can do a lot of damage to your reputation. So you want to make sure that you're making some operational changes and actually walking the walk rather than just talking the talk. Because now consumers can really spot it.
Especially with the internet.
Yeah, especially with the internet and all the different reports out there. So just be open and honest with your intentions and efforts. No one's going to be perfect right away, and I think a lot of customers will see this is a journey from where you're at now to where you want to be, and being transparent is the most important thing. If lying about it will just destroy your reputation. Now we'll move on to part 2, sustainable logistics strategies. I know that most of you here today probably don't have a lot of control over manufacturing, but it's definitely worth mentioning from a sustainable logistics perspective, just because if you do have any influence over manufacturers, definitely you want them to design a product with sustainability in mind, end of life, and how many you can fit in a truck is one of the most important things, because that really will have a huge environmental impact over time. So packing it densely and packing density is one way to ensure that you won't have as many truckloads, and that will definitely reduce your impact. So packaging, again, this is more on the manufacturing side, but it will lower warehousing costs to have less packaging or unique packaging. And that sustainable packaging can also really differentiate a product from competitors. So it's a really...
I'd like to also add is anybody who's a consumer at all, you'll notice a lot of stuff gets shipped from China these days. And I remember when my kids were young, you would get all their toys would be from China, and they would be wrapped in this plastic, and it was unbelievably difficult to unpack that stuff. And there was lots of injuries, and now you see that emergency rooms now track packaging injuries because it's gotten that bad, because so much stuff no one wants their stuff to move on the way from China to the U.S., but the packaging has become dangerous.
Yeah, it's a little bit nuts, but just wanted to mention this. If you did have the ability to impact, you might not. We have a lot of other procedures we're going to talk about first. So moving on to brokers and 3PLs, this might seem like if you're a broker or a third-party logistics provider that you don't necessarily have the ability for sustainable practices, but the truth is that you do, and that is in sustainable purchasing. Your power is in where you're procuring your trucks and freight. So what you really want to do here is create a long-term plan for procurement, and it could be within the next year, it could be within the next 2 years, and just setting those goals. So one example could be, we'll talk about Smartway next, and just...
I'd like to add one thing on this is, we're all, if you're in the trucking or if you do a lot of trucking with your 3PL, since you are procuring, trucks for customers, you have that carrier network that you're building. You could say, I would like to set a goal by the end of the year that, that I understand where each of my carriers is at in terms of sustainability. And there's some really easy steps to take, but I think there's an advantage is because you can start going to customers who value sustainability and say, look, 20% of the trucks that we use are, alternative fuel or have taken a step in the direction of a sustainable logistics practice.
Right. So that goes along with creating a long-term plan for your procurement. And the first thing you have to do is measure the impacts. They might do that within the trucking company, but more than likely you want to help them to get on that track and to have some key performance indicators so you're seeing what impacts each trucking company is having. And that starts with scorecards and just measuring. So, and then, like I said, when you're a broker or a third-party logistics provider, all of your power is in procurement, and that doesn't mean you have no power just because you don't own any assets. It's there, and it's definitely an option. So Smartway is what we talked about a little bit before. So it's a public and private partnership between freight transportation sector, and this is to improve supply chain efficiency. I just have a quote from Smartway here that says, Smartway reduces transportation-related emissions that affect climate change, reduce environmental impact for companies, and increase global security. This is one really easy way. It's free for brokers and 3PLs to sign up for it, and then there's a common vision there. There's a strategy that you don't have to come up with yourself. You can sign up for Smartway. You can have your freight providers sign up for Smartway as well.
And when you talk about, Kelly talked about measuring your brokers. You could say, by the end of the year, I want every one of the carriers I use to be a member of Smartway. It's a very small step. Again, they're showing, the very minimal amount of effort there. So why wouldn't you do this? It's an easy way. And then when you start talking to customers who value that, you can say, hey, here's what we've done this year. And next year you take one more step.
Ramp it up. Yeah. Start small, and then as you gain some momentum, as you get more comfortable and you see the returns from these sustainable upgrades, you can ramp up your mission. So now we'll talk a little bit about trucking and fuel. So there are trailers made from carbon fiber, and I found these really interesting because they're more than 4 tons lighter, allowing you to have heavier truckloads and fewer trips, really. That's a huge fuel savings. Another thing is particulate filters. That's been really big in that area. And one thing that's already on the road, a lot of trucking companies are already using this, is compressed natural gas and diesel fuel. And this is not perfect. It's not the perfect fuel, but it is an improvement from what we have now, and it will save money on gas. So there's fewer emissions, you'll save money on gas, and it's less of an impact on the environment.
I have some firsthand knowledge with a supplier that, a trucking company, I should say, that uses dual fuel vehicles. So it's half diesel, half CNG. And when you have compressed natural gas, obviously you need some new places to stop. There are fuel places that you can stop to get this taken care of, get more CNG. And actually, T. Boone Pickens, the billionaire from I think Oklahoma and Texas area, he's putting these in all over the place. And the trucking company that I know of goes all the way from way up north here all the way down to Texas. And they never once use their diesel fuel. They're able to stop and use and fill up at CNG facilities all the way down to from way up here in the north all the way south. And those trucks run $1 cheaper per mile.
So that's
fantastic
really
savings.
Significant savings on that fuel. And again, it's not perfect, but it is much fewer emissions than the alternative. So now we'll move on to talking about planes and the carbon reduction. So are these new lightweight unit load devices, and those are what you pack the goods in for air freight. They are a huge fuel reduction from the heavier, the typical aluminum containers. So they would have a pretty short payback period, and they're just, planes are kind of lagging behind it in the sense that there's not much you can do yet. But these technologies like these lightweight unit load devices are really helping. And also biofuel. I know biofuel is not perfect. There's a lot of controversy. But for airplanes, there are some goods that just need to be moved by air. There's no way to avoid it, such as vaccines. So we're really just trying to reduce the environmental impact of that. And it might not be corn biofuels. There's also algae. There's a number of other ones as well. So now we'll talk about carbon neutral and carbon mitigation strategies. Those are just some things that the entire air freight industry is working on. They haven't gotten as far as you might think, but they're trying really hard to, rather than reduce their impact, have carbon neutral growth. So have the same amount of planes going up, grow the industry, but also kind of stay where they're at with emissions. And I think the unit load devices were probably my favorite of these solutions. Okay. Now we'll move on to ship. And there's some simple upgrades that I found that are really impactful. So the first is the return to wind power. This is kind of using conventional wisdom to our advantage. So retrofitting ships with these new sails can reduce fuel costs and environmental impact, reduce fuel costs by 10 to 35%. So very significant fuel costs. And also that's significant reduction in CO2 emissions. Also really great because there isn't that instability of not knowing how much fuel is going to cost or where it's coming from. You're really reducing your risk by investing in these. And you can also retrofit them. So it's not buying a whole new ship. It's just the sales. So there's actually a pretty short payback period on that. Moving on, we'll talk about biocide-free paint. Biocide-free paint is pricey, but it pays itself back within 10 months. And what's really significant about this technology is that it keeps organisms, marine organisms, off the hull of the boat. So when you're going far distances from one ocean to another, you are not introducing non-native species, which is better for the environment, and it's also more hydrodynamic. So you're actually saving on fuel costs as well.
Those invasive species are important everywhere, but we're up here in Michigan, and one of the issues we've had over time is these zebra mussels that didn't come, we saw them coming lake by lake, yeah. And they came, attached to ocean liners or sea freight.
Yeah, and
a lot of it was the bilge water too.
Well, those are really harmful because they reduce the hydrodynamic abilities of the boat. So, yeah, it actually costs more in fuel to have those invasive species introduced, and if you can avoid it, it's a significant impact on the environment and on cost. So it's a really cool option. All right, now we'll talk about Railcar, and this is a big opportunity in logistics right now. Double stacking containers to utilize the train length. This is a really good option in the U.S. I know there's restrictions in other countries, so might not be ideal for everyone. But yeah, double stacking, you're just using a load that's already going, so it's a reduction in CO2 emissions, it's more efficient and safer. Gensets are another, it's a new train upgrade with several independent engines that turn on and off based on the energy required for a different task. So say it's going down a hill, some of the engines are going to turn off. It's not going to be much more efficient. And then the last thing is software that determines the most fuel efficient speed for any given route. And this is really cool because technology is taking over and making things more efficient. And these may be investments that logistics companies have already made without even realizing the environmental impact that it has.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of the things that, as I started looking at this sustainable logistics, we've always been about reducing fuel and optimizing routes and eliminating truck lanes. We've always done that really with the idea of how do I save money. But we also should get credit for the environmental good that we're doing. So we're already
it's a reduction of a negative, and now now after being able to reduce that negative, they can start to question how can I positively impact the environment rather than just these efficiency upgrades. Now we'll talk a little bit more about warehousing efficiency, and this is the largest growing or the fastest growing segment of the supply chain and logistics. So it does have a huge impact, and that's why I felt it was necessary to include it. There are ways to plan a warehouse so it's smaller, which would be lower rent and utilities. The amount of energy you need is decreased, so it's a lower carbon footprint. And you also have easier control over your inventory, less walking, so it's a better workplace for everyone involved. Now we'll talk a little bit about the general technology. E-Freight is a program that aims to keep paper out of air cargo and replace it with electronic data. And actually, carriers, freight forwarders, ground handlers, shippers, and even customs authorities are getting involved in this. It's more secure, safer, quicker, better overall because you aren't having that space taken up by paperwork. It's never going to get lost in translation. Customs authorities find it easier, so it's not going to be as much of a hassle crossing borders and that kind of thing. So it's really a good option. Now we'll talk a little bit more about optimized truck routes. This is, again, one of those things that logistics companies have been using for a little while now with the idea of saving money, but it's also really having this impact on the environment that I don't think people who aren't involved in logistics know about. So it's trucking software is allowing logistics companies to plan for the most efficient route. This means fewer miles traveled and less risk of damage to the goods, and also safer for the drivers to be making shorter trips or more efficient trips, and it saves money, also CO2 emissions, just because of these more intelligently planned routes.
Yeah, and a lot of times and I think everyone knows this in the room, but a lot of times you can actually eliminate lanes when you start looking at this using the right thinking to look at your route.
I didn't want to dwell on this, but I'll definitely touch on it. Recycling is one route for sustainable practices within the company, and it's cheaper than all new materials and keeps waste out of landfills. But it also creates pollution, so it's not exactly the greatest long-term solution. Again, we've talked about some solutions. Recycling is just one that gets a lot of buzz, but you definitely have to do that cost-benefit analysis and see what are the costs involved, what's the environmental impact involved, what pollution are we creating, and what's the impact of that. So
it's better to not start with the waste.
yeah, so it's better to just eliminate the waste from the beginning than it is to go back and recycle that waste. And then reuse is another thing to discuss. So it's a closed loop system. You're not putting everything back into a landfill. I know there's some new solutions with pallets where they're made out of a more durable material and then just filled up with sand when they're in use, and they can be folded up and deflated, or so to speak, deflated, compressed down, and they can travel back, and that will save money. But also, you need to consider if sending these containers back and forth is the best option.
Yeah, you're using extra gas.
Yeah, you're using extra fuel. Again, this is one of those things where cost-benefit analysis is needed to see if it's beneficial or not. Now we'll go into energy audits, and this is just for anyone who has an office or a facility, warehouse, anything like that. And I've worked in energy audits before, and it's really a systems analysis of all the different electrical operating systems in a building, and to see can there be less energy used. We would call the inefficient systems, like if there was one item that just needed to be replaced or upgraded and it was costing hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in utilities. So an energy audit can help you to identify those, and operational managers would usually really, really benefit from this, but it's something that is still kind of off the radar to some. So, and then I just put some general office best practices that you can use. So keeping lights off, I'm sure everyone already knows this. Examining the type of light bulbs you use to see which is best, and monitoring, just knowing what's going on in your operations is the most important step. Same thing goes for thermostats. Know when the building's in use and when it needs to be heated up or cooled down, or when it could just be off and not wasting any electricity. And turning computers off when you leave at night, unplugging appliances when they are in use. This may be one that sounds simple, but it really does use electricity when you leave things plugged in. Here's another teleconferencing. Rather than flying someone out, it's cheaper, fewer emissions, better for whoever's traveling because they don't need to have those late nights and early mornings traveling for a meeting. Yeah, teleconferencing is just a better option overall. It's something that a lot of companies should start promoting, or already have started promoting. Avoid receiving and sending physical mail. I'm sure you guys know some of these. Ditching single-use plastic water bottles. Tap water is just as safe. Using a water cooler is just as safe. Proper disposal for recycling electronics and batteries. All right, now back to the fun stuff. Sustainable logistics implementation. So I'm sure by now you're wondering, how can I actually implement this in my own business? Well, it starts with an environmental vision and policy. This is a high-level summary of your goals as far as sustainability goes. It can be broad, but it also needs to have some meaning to it. It communicates your intentions as a company and what you want your environmental impacts to be, and social impacts and financial impacts. And you can also have this accessible on your website so your customers can see that you're trying to become more sustainable.
I would also like to point out, like any initiative you might try within your organization, you really need to start at the top for some of this, because it's one thing to say, yeah, I'm going to do it individually, but these things need a broad team and broad support and maybe some investment, and certainly the high-ups have to believe in it. I've seen throughout my career a lot of times where you get half-hearted support on these things from senior management. Like, yeah, it's the right thing, but don't really want to spend a lot of time on it.
We'll go into that in just a minute. So I just want to talk about what goals and KPIs you can use. So SMART goals, I'm sure you've heard of it before. It's pretty common now. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-sensitive. This is a way to hold yourself accountable to your sustainability goals. Some KPIs, just a couple basics. Energy intensity is one, and you might have heard of cost per unit with transportation. Well, we want to take that a step further, and some companies already have, by saying, well, what's the fuel per unit or per truckload? So that's one KPI.
I think one way to figure that out is if you think about a truck, you know how much fuel it's using to move your load. You could convert the fuel cost into fuel gallons, diesel gallons, I guess, and then say how many units of diesel did it take to move my widget from my facility to my customer.
Right. There's a lot of stuff online that can help you to determine these KPIs, and really to measure. Like, measurement is the first step to being able to report on this and being able to show that you actually are having an impact. Another is waste diversion and units per shipment. We talked earlier about pack density of trucks, and that's more related to that. Now I want to go into certifications. Certifications are definitely not necessary to start, but it's definitely something to consider. A lot of customers are looking for, like, what third party do you have that's confirmed that you're working on this sustainability? Well, we'll talk about two different ones here. So there's a lot of confusion between B corporations and benefit corporations. B Lab is a nonprofit organization that specializes in the certification of B corporations, or B Corp for short. The certification and reporting method that measures a company's triple top line values, and you pay a membership fee annually depending on the size of your company. And it's a third-party assessment as well, so there's a whole report that goes along with that, and it's just another method of accountability. The benefits to having a B Lab certified B corporation are that you're connected to this whole network of other B corporations, and they can sometimes cut you a deal on different products and services that you need in your business, and also they can bring new customers, or they can be new customers. So it really connects you to the whole network of other sustainable-minded businesses. The confusion that I was talking about comes in with the difference between B Lab and benefit corporations. So benefit corporations are a way to file your business, so kind of like a benefit corporation as opposed to an S Corp. And it's legislation that helps companies with a social or environmental mission to operate despite their different priorities from conventional business. One of the things that they'll be able to do is help you to hold more capital for if you're trying to create these improvements rather than just having financial returns. You want to have social or environmental returns as well. That's what the benefit corporation legislation helps you to do. And 31 states currently have benefit corporation legislation, and there's a couple others that are working on it. Sadly, here in Michigan is not one of them. Moving on, we'll talk about Kotter's 8-step approach to leading change. And this is a way to implement sustainability initiatives, but it's more general. So it's about change in an organization overall. Do you want to touch on this?
Well, I was just going to say Kotter's approach has been researched, extensively. It's been used to bring change to organizations for many, many years. And there's a ton of research on it. There's a lot of books written on it. A lot of companies I've worked with, including the big 3 automakers, they use this when they're implementing quality changes or lean or whatever else they're up to. So it's a great system. And again, the research on this proves that it's a good way to work. I suspect it's very similar to many other approaches to leading change.
Right, and it's a top-down approach, so it's a really useful way of implementing change in your business. So I'll just go through them real quick. The one, create a sense of urgency rather than just saying, oh, we'll do it next year or next quarter. You're starting today or starting this week, and that's where the SMART goals come into play.
I think the sense of urgency often comes from, hey, we have a real quality problem, or we have a real problem with our lack of sustainability, and we want to make it a goal, and put some time into it, put some passion to it.
Right. Number two, build a guiding coalition, and this again goes to, you need to have some advocates at the top where nothing's ever going to get done because it'll be like, oh, forget it, the sustainability department will deal with it. It's not about a department, it's about having that goal within the DNA of a company and everyone getting involved on that, operational and marketing and everyone. So form strategic vision and initiatives, enlist a volunteer army, enable action by removing barriers, generate short-term wins. This is really important, and I'll go into this in the next slide, but for sustainability, to get people to that new paradigm of this won't cost me a whole bunch of money. And then 7, sustain acceleration, and 8, institute change. So these are more specific to sustainability, but they go along with Kotter's approach. Education, defining what sustainability means, making sure everyone in the company knows that everyone's on the same page. So the next one I have is probably the most important, and this is focus on low-hanging fruit first, because you're never going to change someone's mind until you start with that action. So if someone thinks in their head, well, this is going to cost money, it's not going to save our company any money, they're just going to think that until you show them otherwise. Those low-hanging fruits are small investments with a short payback period that get people excited about sustainability and show them a way that they may not have thought about it before. And that's
new paradigm.
It's a whole new paradigm, and you need to understand, I need to understand, everyone needs to understand that people who have been doing things the same way for a long time, they know their stuff. They know what they're talking about. But to show them this new way of doing things might take a little bit more energy and a little bit more effort, but it will pay off in the end. Write an environmental vision and policy statement. And this, we've talked about that before. Put it on your website, make sure your customers see it, make sure everyone in the organization sees it, and they understand that it's an important part of operations now. It's more than just words, it's the action behind it, it's the intention behind it. Like I said, it's in the DNA of the company. So we'll talk about this really important end to this. Sustainability is not a destination. It's continuous improvement. It's evolving to overcome new challenges. There's no silver bullet. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. There is time and effort required, but staying proactive helps to actually manage risk. So it's not some risky addition to business, as we talked about. It can save you money. It can help you not have to worry about environmental regulations completely scrambling your business, because you'll be proactive, you'll be on top of it, you'll be on the cutting edge. And it will pay off in the end, financially, environmentally, socially. It's not going to go away. Sustainability is here to stay now, and there's customers that want it, businesses that are already working on it. So that's kind of my piece on it. Are there any questions that anyone has at this time? We would love to address any questions or comments anyone has. And also, any resources we use will be available by email if you'd like. We can send you a video of this video, or the presentation, or just the resources that I used to put it together. Are there any questions? If not, we'll just wrap it up. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. We're really passionate about this topic, and we've learned a lot through doing this presentation. Yeah, let us know if you have any questions. Here's my email and my dad Joe's email as well. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
You guys. Yeah, you guys have a good day. I'm sorry? You guys have a great day.
Bye, Joe.